3, 2, 1.
Good evening. Welcome to the virtual launch event to the Southgates Master Plan public consultation. Can I have just the next screen on, please? Right, the consultation is from starts today and actually will end at the end of the month on the 31st of October. This is really a chance for you to give us have a first indication of what the master plan is about, but then to give us your feedback. We're running a series of drop-in sessions across the month on the 11th, 19th and 28th, all being held in the Tuesday marketplace from 11 o'clock in the morning until 6 p.m. There'll also be questionnaires available to you at the Tourist Information Centre, and you can also get further questionnaires online during the consultation process. Go next slide, please. It looks like Rogues Gallery next piece. Right. The Southgates Master Plan is a collaborative piece of work. We have worked together with key stakeholders, including the Town Board, the Historic England Civil Society, and many other local stakeholders. The team is made up of a variety of council, Kingsland and West Norfolk council members, council officers, Norfolk County Council officers and members, and we have specialists from urban design in Jagana, I'll get a name right one of these days, from urban design, and Rachel from urban design as well, and a specialist on transport advisor from Urban Flow. So I'm going to hand over to I think to Rachel, who will give you a bit more idea of how to ask questions on the process we're going to go through for the rest of the evening.
Thank you, Councillor Blunt. So yeah, as Councillor Blunt just said, my name's Rachel Hoff and I'm a town planner at BDP, and we are the consultants who have been working on the master plan over the past few months with our transport advisors, Urban Flow, and our viability advisors, Montague Evans. So just to run you through quickly how tonight's event is going to work, we'll be giving you a presentation for about 40 minutes on our work on the Southgates Master Plan to date. And if you'd like to make any comments or ask any questions during the presentation, then there's an opportunity to do so via the question function on Teams. So the slide on screen now is showing you how to access this. You can click the Q&A symbol, which should be at the top right of your screen, and then the purple Ask a Question button. Once the presentation is finished, we'll hopefully have around 20 minutes for a Q&A session where we'll answer questions that have been asked throughout the presentation. If there are more questions asked than we have time for, we're also going to be publishing a list of FAQs on the Vision Kingsland website in the next week or so. Just to make you aware that when you ask the question, there should be an option to make this anonymous, so please tick this box if you'd rather that we didn't see your name. Next slide, please. I'm now just quickly going to run through the agenda for tonight, which, as I said, will be around 40 minutes of presentation, followed by 20 minutes of questions. So to start with, we'll have Duncan Hall from the Borough Council providing a quick summary of the project background and the steps that have led to BDP's appointment to prepare the master plan. I'll then be taking you through our initial research on the Southgates area that helped us to understand the key issues and the opportunities for the master plan to address. I'll be doing that together with John, our transport advisor from Urban Flow. I'll then hand over to my colleague Gagana, who will run through the process that we went through to develop the master plan and subsequently our proposed vision and site strategies. Gagana will also outline the next steps following production of the master plan. And then finally, as I said, Councillor Blunt will be back to chair our Q&A session where the team will answer any questions sent through during the presentation. So I'll now hand you over to Duncan, who will explain more about the project background.
Thank you, Rachel. Good evening, everyone. So yeah, it's for me to just set the scene here and provide a bit of context on the project. So the concept of delivering a holistic master planning approach for this area emerged from our work with Historic England in connection with a Heritage Action Zone programme, a heritage-led regeneration programme that ran from 2017 till 2022, till this year. There had been a number of studies and funding bids that had looked at the area, its opportunities and its challenges. But the collective view from the HAS board was to create a holistic master plan within a defined area with a vision to create a high quality gateway to the town, improving perceptions and first impressions for both residents, for visitors to the town, and crucially investors to the town. So it was June 2021 when a report went to the Borough Council's cabinet to commission the master plan work, and that started early this year. So the second point there, previous studies and the HAS board suggested that a new placemaking approach is required. So what does that mean? Placemaking is about strengthening the connection between people and places that they share. It's characterised by being community driven, being context specific, and it's about the function of spaces, their physical, social and cultural identities, and they're all things that are going to be picked up on in the slides. What it isn't is a top-down or just a car journey led approach, or just a benefit cost ratio approach, looking at the context of economic analysis. The third point there is around the opportunity that arose during the year for a levelling up fund. The levelling up fund, part of the government's levelling up agenda. A new bidding round was launched in March, soon after we'd started the work with BDP. The timescales were very challenging, and I think our initial thoughts that we weren't necessarily ready for the funding, but I think with County Council colleagues and with the prospect of another project that had been worked up around improving cycling and walking infrastructure and bus priorities to the northern part of the town, and the gyratory project, we thought that they married very well, and in fact they fitted the objectives of the government's funding very well. So this meant that we changed our timescales a bit, that we accelerated some of the work in more detail, and in the summer, in July, a bid was submitted by Norfolk County Council. It's a competitive process. We may hear by the end of the year, and there's no certainty around the funding, but what we have got and what we will have for any future funding, if that's appropriate, is a plan in place. So looking at the master plan objectives, when we set the brief, we want to create a strategic vision and design principles for the future. We want to provide a delivery strategy and briefs for development. And what we're trying to do now is open up public debate, and we want to encourage political ambition and to seek and generate a consensus around the way forward. You'll see from the plan there, that's the area, the master plan area within the red line. So over a number of years, the Borough Council has been strategically acquiring land, and the pink areas in the plan show the Borough Council's ownership. The green areas third party ownership, and the blue area is the highway. So you'll see the A149, the A148 to Cllr Wisbech Road, the B1144 and London Road at the north of the site. That's the context in broad and a high level few minutes. Back to you, Rachel.
Thank you, Duncan. So I'm just going to explain a bit more about our initial process in developing the master plan. So following our appointment to the project, the first thing that we at CDP wanted to do was develop a better understanding of the key characteristics of Southgate to understand what the master plan really needed to address. So we did this through a combination of visiting the area, speaking to local people and businesses, and reviewing the various studies that have been undertaken before that Duncan just mentioned. One of our key findings, which I'm sure you would expect, is that the Southgate area has a rich history. The area, and more specifically the Southgate, have acted as the southern entrance into King's Lynn since medieval times and continue to do so today. There are also numerous listed buildings on the site and archaeological remains, including a medieval bridge next to the Southgate and potentially Civil War defences. The area is also a strategically important location in terms of connecting other regeneration areas within King's Lynn. So that would include the town centre, Nora, the riverfront regeneration area, and the West Winchgrowth area, which all lie in close proximity and have routes to these areas converging at the Southgate roundabout. Next slide, please. So alongside the strength of the area, we also found that there were some key issues that the master plan needed to address. So firstly, placemaking in urban form. The presence of the major roundabout junction and areas of vacant land mean that the area just isn't welcoming and doesn't provide an entrance that does justice to the rest of King's Lynn when you get into the town. Secondly, transport and movement. The area is of course very vehicle dominated, which makes things difficult for pedestrians, cyclists or public transport users to move around. And that's something that John, our transport advisor, will be touching on more in the next slide. Thirdly, heritage. While the area contains numerous heritage assets, they're currently compromised by what's going on around them. So in particular, the Southgate acts as a traffic island and is at risk of damage from vehicle movement, as illustrated on the image on the slide. And finally, environment and sustainability. Due to previous industrial uses on land around the roundabout, much of this is contaminated, which means the sharing of our slide, or if it's my connection that dropped out. Oh, there we go there. So I'm now going to hand over to John, who will talk a bit more about the transport and the movement context.
Good evening, everyone. Well, here's a familiar site, the Southgates.
John, you may just need to wait for a second before it loads up. So there you go.
Good evening, everyone. There's a familiar site. There's the Southgates roundabout right at the heart, if you like, of the action there. It's had, as you'll be aware, lots of attention over the years, much of it directed at traffic flow, but less attention on the needs of those people in the local area living adjacent or walking or cycling through the area. The roundabout form itself is very efficient in terms of vehicle throughput. It occupies a very large area, as you'll appreciate, but it's rather less able in terms of accommodating the needs of those walking and cycling. The form itself means that the crossing is difficult, involving delay, waiting for vehicles quite often, diverted routes around the roundabout to get from A to B, and crossing some quite considerable distance. It has clearly quite a visual impact with it as well, and we've got rather a sea of tarmac at this key entry point to historic King's Lynn. So the master plan ambition was for transformational change, and leaving the roundabout as it is at the moment is not really a very enticing prospect or encouraging prospect for transformational change. So as you'll have seen hopefully already in the taster image, and there'll be more to follow, the master plan proposes to replace this large scale junction and some of the links in the area with crossroads, junctions and T-type junctions, much more in keeping with the local scale, and also in keeping with the visual setting and the heritage of the area, and being much better in terms of facilities for walking and cycling, but also for bus as well, to afford bus more priority in the area, but still providing good traffic performance, because we recognise, of course, that there is strategic traffic in the area and through traffic that still needs to be provided for. So in summary, it would be a more compact and better balanced road network in this vicinity for everyone. That's it.
Gagana, you're on. You're on mute.
Yeah, but I can't turn it off.
Oh, there you're on. You're on now.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Gergana Draganova, and I'm an urban design director in BDP, leading the design of the master plan. Thanks, John and Rachel and Duncan and Councillor Blunt for the introduction. I'll take you through the process we've been through with coming up with some vision and ideas about the master plan. So what's been driving this? It's very much, we see it as a major opportunity. Whilst there are certain challenges with the site, this master plan is very much an opportunity to respond to current issues that relate to climate change, and the Council declared climate emergency last year, which is very much important to be reflected upon in the master plan. And there is also a point which is quite valid for everyone in terms of how the patterns of living are changing and how people move and work differently. So how can we grasp this opportunity alongside also the levelling up agenda, which Duncan was talking about, and the fact that there was this kind of opportunity to submit an application to get some funding possibly for this project. And how does this relate in terms of what we could do with the master plan? I mean, starting with the point which John was talking about, it is very much about the shift in terms of travel. How can we encourage people to be more active, to use more cycling, walking? At the moment, the site is not particularly pedestrian or cyclist friendly. Can we transform that? Also, with the Southgate being such an important heritage and historic asset in King's Lynn, can we enhance and improve its settings? How can we bring it that special sense of place and local pride, which the town centre has, but it's to a great extent lacking around Southgates? Last but not least, it's very much about the sustainability agenda. In this case, we're talking about environmental, but also social, about the impact this change could have on the local community, but also on the sustainability in terms of water and air quality in the area. So where did we start from? Councillor Blunt mentioned that we did engage on some of the developments also with key stakeholders in the area, but we started from the position, what is the level of ambition we want to achieve with this master plan? Starting with scenario one, which, as we said, this is very much the minimum. We've got the existing infrastructure, we've got the buildings and plots. If we look at it and just say, oh, we'll introduce some new development on the buildings that are neglected, but in general, we leave everything as it is. Then moving on, then the scenario two, which is more kind of minor improvements. We discussed quite a lot that with John in terms of how we can potentially narrow some parts of the carriageway, still introduce some cycle lanes and better pedestrian crossings, but limit the intervention to a minimum, retaining still the roundabout and introducing new development. And then the third one, which is very much, can we be ambitious? It's about changing perception, and it's very much about responding to the opportunity which I was talking earlier. So that meant really comprehensively looking what are the opportunities about role diversion, about enhancing the quality of the place around Southgates and how that could shape up. So we did develop quite many options in terms of that, and the conclusion of that was very much that scenario 3 is the one which could unlock major benefits for the area. And in this case, when I say the area, it's not the site only, but we're talking about delivering long-term change for the wider area, and that will very much reflect the current trends about changing of lifestyles and also the priorities in terms of the funding opportunities. And that translates into very much improving the immediate settings and the visual presence of Southgate with potentially new public realm and amenities around it. The green space, there is the park there now, but it's not cared for to the extent that it should be. So how can we enhance those green spaces? How can we calm a bit the traffic, still allow for traffic, but make sure that there are no conflicts and it's not dominating as it is today? And in terms of that, also, of course, retaining the significance of Southgate, even if the road is realigned, then the route through the gate still remains a major arrival into King's Lynn. And in this case, then assist in terms of making the plots of land which are available potentially for development, which could part fund this the master plan be delivered. And this is very much a kind of very illustrative initial sketch which we produced, which with the idea that this is giving an idea to people what this vision we have tried to define is. And it is a vision about creating an attractive new place for King's Lynn, which draws upon the rich past, and it's very much responding the present day needs. And also it's very much about optimizing the benefits for the residents, but also the visitors, because we can see the opportunity how reinventing and enhancing this place could contribute to the wider economy of King's Lynn itself. And this is again, I should mention here, these are just kind of illustrative sketches. Don't take this is designed. This is just one way of the way it could shape up, but it's very much about the importance of the gate and how it could open up. I mean, you can see on the left-hand side, that's the former pub building. So how suddenly from car and lorries dominated place, it could become more a place for people. And again, this is just one of the indicative sketchy plans which we did, but it indicates the numbers here, some of the key moves we see as an opportunity that will help this vision be achieved. And it's about working with the heritage. There is the existing wall, which is along this side of the plan, so retaining how that's fully integrated within the new public space, with the bridge, which at the moment is hardly visible to anyone, and generally how the space around the Southgate can be much more accessible and more pleasant for people to sit around and enjoy. Then another space, how we then link, because at the moment the Ford Garage building is here, but there is no connection really between Southgate and the river. So how this could become much more a place where people could walk and enjoy the views to the river, but also the heritage of the Southgates. And in terms of existing trees as well, we were talking about environmental sustainability as well, trying to work with the existing trees and generally introduce more green space, which will improve the air quality and the general character of the place itself. And one of the very important parts that relate to the history is also this view corridor, which is not a view corridor in this case only, but it's also a physical route, which is still the main arrival into King's Lynn. As I said, these are just sketch examples of what it could be. As what we're producing and we are talking to you about now is what we call a development brief. Development brief is not a specific proposal. It's a proposal which gives direction of how the future design could shape up. And to make sure that this ambition and vision is reflected into the proposals, we've defined a series of strategy which relate to the key elements we see critical for the area. And they relate to what Rachel was talking about and what Duncan was explaining in terms of objectives. It's about the placemaking, how we make it a better place. It relates to the travel and movement, how we encourage more active travel, and also to heritage, enhancing the setting of the heritage and how the heritage becomes a focal point of the new development. And the fourth one is about the environmental sustainabilities. The idea with these strategies is that they're not specific, but they provide that framework which will inform. I'll briefly go through those. They're also in the draft document, which is being published as part of this consultation. So you can look at those in more detail, and that's where here we've got the reference exactly on which pages. But starting with the placemaking in urban form, and these are diagrams that indicate the key elements to that. And they're very much similar to what I was talking about, but we want to highlight how important they are in this case. So it's about new development which respect the local character and follows the principles of good design. That's about the new place being pleasant, but also being safe to be. And it's also about how we make it a nice place which people want to visit. So elements that will bring activity and visual interest. I mean, even opening up those views to the gate already means that the area will become more accessible because people would see it as an element they will make easy to understand and to orientate themselves. So where we say, yeah, wayfinding, that's what it means, that you see something and you go to see it. Then travel and movement. John talked about that earlier, and this is just an indication of how we suggest that the development should improve definitely the pedestrian and cycle routes, the alignment of the new roads that could be to the east of the gate. That's not fixed, but it's again an indication of where it could be. But the idea that the existing Crow Junction, which is a very large roundabout with space which is not used, is much more reduced, and we bring in the scale of a person, that it doesn't feel like it's dominated by lorries, but at the same time still making sure that it is a road which people can drive on, and it doesn't cause any delays or traffic jams. In this case, the importance of the gate is a route, main arrival, of how it's designed so that it remains a major route for cyclists and pedestrians through the gate. as a special experience. And the last one is also about public transport, that if we intervene in this area, how we also make it easier for buses and generally public transport to serve the area. It is much more efficient in terms of vehicle movement in that case. On heritage, again, these are elements which are covered in the draft document, but they relate to what Rachel was talking about, our initial analysis and findings, and working closely with Historic England as well. The development needs to respect and enhance the setting of the existing heritage assets. And we did talk a lot about the Southgate, but it's not only the Southgate. There are lots of other elements that are quite important for that sense of place, and also that relate to the heritage in this case. And you can see the diagram, Buckingham Terrace, it's quite important. The Southgate Wall, the former pub, Prince of Wales pub, just a few in this case. And then the route through the gate itself, how it needs to be easily identifiable, because that's the historic route. And last but not least, it's also about the feasibility to make sure that it is achievable in this case, because it's not just an aspiration, it's a project which we wish to move on and be delivered. The element of environment and sustainability, which directly responds to the climate emergency, and also about well-being and health. So how we make sure that the development deals with existing issues on the site, but how it relates to the flood risk issue, which we're close obviously to the river, and the green infrastructure, the opportunity to improve the quality of the green space and encourage biodiversity. Also in terms of energy efficiency, how we can achieve buildings that would be energy efficient, and even think about zero carbon, or in terms of generating electricity locally. Of course, the other one is related back to the heritage in terms of measures that we integrate with existing heritage context. So that's very much in brief. I will hand over to Councillor Blunt now, who will be chairing a questions and answers session. I think we have about half an hour for that. So we'll welcome any comments and questions in the live chat. Thank you very much, Rachel. I'll hand back to you. Rachel? Hello?
Sorry, Councillor Blunt should now be live, but
okay.
I'm told that we don't currently have any questions. So if anybody who's on the call would like to type something in the chat and ask the question, that would be great.
Would any of our presenters like to add any additional comment? Or we're waiting for somebody to add something to chat?
Yeah, if I could just say, because I'm mindful, thank you, Councillor Blunt, I'm mindful that this is going to be recorded, and there could be people viewing this, not live, but in the days or weeks to come, that there's an opportunity for us to, for questions to be fed in for the whole of this month. And if you're, if you're on for the next half an hour or so, and you want to put in a question, we will come back to all the questions that go into the Q&A. So just running through some next steps then. I think the development brief document itself will be available to view at the Tourist Information Centre. That's where the Stories of Lynn Museum is, next to the Town Hall on the Saturday Marketplace. There's also some exhibition boards there. The drop-in events that Councillor Blunt mentioned at the beginning, just to remind people, are on the 11th, 19th and 28th of this month between 11 and 6. The venue is actually a white building, temporary building, adjacent to the Duke's Head Hotel. In terms of where we go from here, clearly once we've had feedback received over the course of this month, we'll look to update the master plan and development brief document, and we will then look for the document to be adopted and go through the processes of the Borough Council in Kings Lynn and West Norfolk to be adopted at a future meeting. We'll then look also at doing some further market testing, both in terms of commercial developers and investors and residential, and there'll be further work looking at the road network design. I think there's a question, so if I just hold fire on that last slide and hand back to Abby.
Well, I'll ask. I think the question I think is the one. This relates to what will be the effect that will this have on the traffic in the area? I don't know. Ian, want to mention what sort of thoughts you have on that?
Hello, yes, thanks, Richard. So I just saw the question on the Q&A and it said, actually, will this affect traffic in other areas of the town? I suspect the answer is that not greatly, but it will have a bit of an impact locally, because obviously we're keen to implement good measures for walking and cycling and bus priority. And clearly, as part of developing the scheme, we will need to understand those impacts and work out the best arrangement to best balance the sort of highway capacity for use between walking, cycling and cars.
And Richard, if I could just come in to add to what Ian said, this isn't done blindly. So there's a good deal of technical work in support of the development of this scheme, and others have said we're still at a relatively early stage of the development of the scheme itself, but certainly enhancing the corridor, making it far more attractive for people to walk and cycle, improving connectivity for buses is absolutely critical. And of course, what we'll see with that and what's been proven elsewhere is a shift to those healthier, more sustainable travel modes, things that support improvements to air quality, improvements to health and well-being as well, and I don't think that's been mentioned. So it's something that, you know, we will gather together even more evidence to be able to demonstrate that this is the right scheme. And one more point, if I may, whilst I've got the mic. The County Council only had one opportunity to make a levelling up fund submission as the upper tier transport authority, and we spent a lot of time scoping out where we potentially could bring forward the maximum benefit, and clearly looking at the success and failures of others across the eastern region was part of that. I've not seen a better strategic fit in terms of a transport scheme. It's standalone, but it also melds incredibly well with the consultation that's now underway, and a commitment from the County Council to continue to work on it. Thank you.
We've got another question.
Yeah, I have another question. I think it's relating to will vehicles be able to move between London Road and Southgate Street? I think that's quite a detailed question on whether we can really answer at this stage, but whether anybody would like to try.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there, Richard. That is something that will need to be determined during the detailed design. I hope the people out there heard that.
Just repeat it.
I said, yes, you're absolutely right, Richard. I think that's something that will need to be determined during the detailed design. Southgate Street being very close to the existing gate, and what we're proposing with the walk and cycling route through the gate. So something for the detailed design.
I have another question that I have received personally relating to this plan, which I will read. I'll ask the question: will the redesign of London Road affect the parking outside the shops and including the post office on London Road? Again, another detailed question.
And I'm more than happy, Richard, to come in on that. We need to understand. I think Duncan said earlier, these schemes should be built from the bottom up. They shouldn't be seen to impose solutions onto the local community. What we should be looking to do is to develop a scheme, and there will be more opportunities for feedback into that as work continues, for us to be able to bring forward something which enhances business opportunities as well as providing for a safer, more attractive highway corridor. So certainly those kind of points are really useful to make, and they're points that we'll take away with us.
I have another question, I think was relating to what will be the effect on the park, and will we be generating any more open space in this area?
If I can answer that. The idea is, and as I was defining with very much the principles about creating sense of place, the idea is that the public space becomes really an important element of the master plan. And whilst there is an existing park there now, it's not very much used. So the idea is that almost the open space, the public space, is reimagined, and it becomes much more central to the space. So in terms of, one thing is the quantity that will certainly be increased, but also is the quality of that space. So I mean, they're very early principles, but the idea is that there will be a balance of parkland, but there will be, which relates potentially more with the river, retention of the existing trees, but also an area of hard landscape, which then could accommodate series of events, and generally that kind of relating also to the historic significance of the gate as well. That was mostly the arrival space. So the sense of almost more formal type of a public space related to that.
Okay, I have another one relating to, will there be a corridor from the South Gates to the Hardwick Retail Park that doesn't go along a busy road?
Shall I take that one?
Please, Ian.
Right, we have just developed a local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, which has basically highlighted all of the key routes into and around the town for cycling and impoving walking, and it's extensive. I mean, clearly, as the questioner points out, you know, London Road, Hardwick Road is busy. I mean, you know, there are proposals to sort of improve walking and cycling along there, but I think, you know, a kind of offline corridor is you know, maybe difficult to achieve unless people have got, you know, incredible ideas for how that might be achieved.
Thank you, Ian. I've got another one. I think I can answer this one just about. It says, it looks as if cyclists will be diverted around the arch. Doesn't it make more sense for them to go through it if anyway, if they live on London Road or out and this was from a keen cyclist. I think we are one is showing that one thing we do want them to do is cyclists to go through the arch. That is a very positive. Walking and cycling through the arch is a very keen aim of this actual project. Right, another question relates to, it would be a shame to lose the O from the Ford garage. Can the building be saved? Stay.
Yeah, I answered this, or Katie can do as well, but at the moment it's a framework, so what we're suggesting doesn't suggest whether it is retained or demolished. So there are obviously creative ways that the existing elements which are important to the building could be retained as part of the new proposal. But we're not being prescriptive in regards to that.
I'm happy to come in as well from an Historic England perspective. Thanks, Rachel. From our perspective, obviously that building is iconic. You see it every day as you're going through the Southgates, and some people feel really strongly towards that building and are incredibly fond of it, and also the lettering on the previous Ford garage. So we would be happy to work with the council to look at alternatives for that site, and potentially we could reuse that signage as well if the proposal was to remove that building, but obviously we would work really closely with the council.
Thank you, Hetty, for that. That's very helpful. I have no other questions. Well, hold on, I may have one just coming through. No, we have no more questions at this stage. Rachel, are you happy to finish at this point? Rachel, are you ready? Should I finish at this point?
Yeah, I think so, unless anybody else would like to come in.
Well, thank you all for attending. It's been hopefully you found it rewarding. I would like to thank all the presenters and all the people who've made this event possible, and I look forward to seeing the comments that will come through the consultation process over the next few weeks. Do not hesitate to make sure you call in at the drop-in centres on Tuesday Marketplace, or pick up a questionnaire from the Tourist Information Centre, or go online. It's very important we have your views. Thank you all very much for attending.
Thank you.